Lynn hesitated just half a second too long. My business partner. Xia's eyebrows shot up, but she simply nodded. Welcome. Come, everyone's waiting. The walk to the family compound was a blur of curious stares and whispered comments. Lynn kept her chin high, but he felt the fine tremors running through her whenever someone called her name. The house was already packed with relatives preparing for tomorrow's wedding. The moment Lynn stepped through the gate, an old woman dropped a basket of vegetables with a cry. Little Lynn? Lynn froze. Popo? Then she was on her knees, being hugged by a tiny, wrinkled woman who smelled of ginger and earth. Stubborn girl, the grandmother scolded through tears. We thought you were dead. The emotional tsunami that followed left them both dazed, aunts pinching Lynn's cheeks, uncles clapping her back, cousins dragging her to see how the village had changed. He hung back, giving Lynn space, until Xia pressed a steaming cup of tea into his hands. She never wrote, Xia confided quietly. After that man took her away, we heard nothing. Then last year, my daughter found her name on a city vendor registry. He watched Lynn across the courtyard, her stern city edges already softening in the childhood home's embrace. She thought you blamed her for leaving. Xia's eyes filled. We blamed ourselves for not stopping him sooner. The wedding preparations became a crash course in Lynn's past. He learned she'd been the village's best cook since age 12, that she could outfish any boy in the river, that her pickled vegetables were still legendary. Each revelation painted a vibrant portrait of the resilient woman he'd come to know, her toughness forged here, in this soil. That evening, as relatives crowded around banquet tables for the rehearsal dinner, an uncle with alcohol-flushed cheeks lurched toward Lynn. Still playing the runaway, eh? The room's chatter died instantly. Lynn set down her chopsticks with deliberate calm. Uncle Feng. The man snorted. Your father died waiting for you. A collective inhale. Xia jumped up. That's enough. It's true. The uncle waved his liquor bottle. Sat by the road every market day, watching the buses. Maybe today, he'd say. Then the rains came, and his lungs. Lynn stood so abruptly her chair toppled. Without a word, she walked out. He found her by the riverbank, knees drawn to her chest. The moonlight caught the tear tracks on her face. He lied, she said hoarsely. My father told me to never come back. Said I'd shamed the family. He sat beside her, their shoulders touching. People say cruel things when they're hurt. The river gurgled between them. After a long silence, Lynn whispered, I should have written. They stayed there until the mosquitoes drove them inside. The single guest room Xia had prepared held one narrow bed. They stared at it, then at each other. I'll take the floor, he said automatically. Every morning at exactly 7:30, he walked down the same busy street, his footsteps blending with the sounds of the waking city. The smell of fresh bread and sizzling food filled the air as street vendors set up their stalls. And every morning, without fail, he saw her. She was always there, sitting on the same worn-out bench near the old bookstore. Her clothes were simple, a little faded, but clean. A small cart beside her held a few homemade snacks, steamed buns, fried dough, sometimes sweet rice cakes. She never spoke much, just a quiet, good morning, and a warm smile whenever he stopped by. He wasn't rich, but he made sure to buy something from her every day. It wasn't just about the food, it was about the way her eyes lit up when she handed him the wrapped bundle, the way she nodded gratefully when he paid a little extra when he could. Over time, these small exchanges became the brightest part of his routine. One rainy morning, he arrived as usual, shaking water off his coat. But the bench was empty. No cart, no food, no quiet smile waiting for him. He stood there for a while, staring at the spot where she always sat, as if she might appear if he waited long enough. But she didn't. At first, he thought maybe she was just late. But as minutes turned into an hour, a strange worry settled in his chest. He asked the nearby shopkeepers if they had seen her. Most just shrugged, she was just another street vendor to them. But the old man who ran the bookstore frowned. She was here yesterday, he said. Left early, though. Looked like she wasn't feeling well. That night, he couldn't stop thinking about her. Where was she? Was she sick? Did she have somewhere to go? He realized with a pang that he knew nothing about her, not where she lived, not if she had family, not even her name. The next morning, he was back at the bench early. Still no sign of her. This time, he didn't just stand there. He walked around the neighborhood, asking anyone who might have known her. A fruit seller remembered seeing her carrying her cart toward the quieter side of town. A young girl who sometimes helped her pack food mentioned she lived near the old bridge. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Without really knowing why, he found himself walking toward the bridge, his heart beating a little faster. He didn't know what he would do if he found her. Maybe just ask if she was okay. Maybe offer help if she needed it. Or maybe, he just needed to know she was safe. As he turned the corner near the river, the streets grew narrower, the buildings more worn. And then, he saw it, her cart, sitting outside a small, crumbling house. The door was slightly open. Taking a deep breath, he stepped closer and knocked lightly. No answer. He knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. His stomach twisted. What if something was wrong? Pushing the door open slightly, he called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" Silence. Then, a weak cough. His pulse jumped. Without thinking, he stepped inside. The room was dim, the air heavy. And there, on a thin mattress in the corner, she lay, pale, shivering, her eyes barely open. When she saw him, her lips moved, but no sound came out. He didn't hesitate. In 2 strides, he was at her side, kneeling down. Her forehead burned under his touch. "You're sick," he said, his voice tight with worry. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" She tried to smile, but even that seemed to take too much effort. "Who would I tell?" The words hit him like a punch. Without another thought, he pulled out his phone. "I'm calling for help." As he waited for the ambulance, he held her hand, his mind racing. How long had she been lying here alone? How many others like her were forgotten every day? And most of all, why had it taken her disappearing for him to truly see her? The ambulance arrived faster than he expected. 2 medics rushed in, checking her temperature, asking quick questions. He stood back, watching as they helped her onto a stretcher, her face still pale but her eyes a little less afraid now that she wasn't alone. One of the medics turned to him. "Are you family?" He hesitated. "No, just a friend." They nodded. "You coming with us?" Without thinking, he climbed into the ambulance beside her. The ride to the hospital was a blur of sirens and streetlights. She drifted in and out of sleep, her fingers gripping the edge of the blanket. He wanted to say something, anything, to reassure her, but words felt useless. So he just sat there, silently promising that he wouldn't leave until he knew she was okay. At the hospital, doctors took her away for tests. He waited in the hallway, pacing, his mind racing with questions. How had things gotten this bad? Why had no one noticed? Hours passed before a tired-looking doctor finally approached him. "She has a severe infection," he said. "Pneumonia, most likely. She's malnourished and weak, but she'll recover with proper care." Relief washed over him. "Can I see her?" The doctor studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Just for a few minutes. She needs rest." The room was quiet when he stepped inside. Machines beeped softly, and the smell of antiseptic filled the air. She looked smaller in the hospital bed, swallowed by the stiff white sheets. But when she saw him, her eyes brightened just a little. "You stayed," she whispered. He pulled a chair closer. "Of course." She turned her face away slightly, as if embarrassed. "You shouldn't have. I'm nobody to you." The word stung. He leaned forward. "That's not true." She didn't answer. For the first time, he really looked at her, not just as the woman who sold him food every morning, but as a person. The lines on her face spoke of years of hardship. Her hands, rough and calloused, told stories of long days and little rest. Who was she before life brought her to that street corner? "You never told me your name," he said gently. A faint smile touched her lips. "Most people don't ask." "Well, I'm asking now." She hesitated, then said softly, "It's Lynn." "Lynn," he repeated. It suited her, simple, quiet, strong. "I'm sorry I didn't ask sooner." She shook her head. "You bought my food." That was enough. But it wasn't. Not anymore. Over the next few days, he visited every morning before work and every evening after. He brought her small things, fresh fruit, a warm scarf, a book to pass the time. At first, she seemed unsure, almost suspicious of his kindness. But slowly, she began to open up. She told him about her village far away, how she had come to the city years ago hoping for a better life. But jobs were scarce, and without family, she had struggled. The food cart was all she had. "And now," she said quietly, staring at her hands, "I've lost even that. The cart is all I owned." He hadn't thought of that. Without her cart, how would she earn money? Where would she go after leaving the hospital? Before he could stop himself, he said, "I'll help you get back on your feet." She looked up, startled. "Why?" The question hung in the air. He didn't have a clear answer. Maybe it was guilt for not seeing her suffering sooner. Maybe it was the way her eyes reminded him of his own grandmother, who had once told him, "The world is hard enough. Be kind whenever you can." Or maybe, after all these mornings of her feeding him, it was his turn to feed her hope. Because, he said simply, that's what friends do. For the first time since he'd known her, Lynn's eyes filled with tears. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. That evening, he left the hospital with a new determination. He went back to her neighborhood, asking about her cart. The old bookstore owner told him the city had probably taken it, abandoned stalls were often cleared away. But he wasn't ready to give up. The next day, he took time off work and went to the municipal storage yard. After hours of searching through piles of confiscated items, he found it, her small, battered cart, tucked away in a corner. The wheels were rusty, and one side was dented, but it was still usable. As he wheeled it out, the storage manager raised an eyebrow. "That thing's seen better days." He just smiled. "It's going to see better days again." Back at his apartment, he got to work. He sanded the rough edges, repainted the faded wood, even added a small awning to shield her from the rain. It wasn't perfect, but it was sturdy. It was hers. When he brought it to the hospital, Lynn's hands flew to her mouth. "You fixed it?" "Tried to," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "I'm not much of a handyman, but—" She reached out and grabbed his hand, cutting him off. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "Thank you." Two simple words, but they carried the weight of something much bigger. The doctor discharged her a week later. She was still weak, but well enough to leave. He helped her gather her things, then hesitated. "Where will you go?" She looked down. "I don't know." The thought of her returning to that crumbling house by the bridge made his chest ache. Before he could second-guess himself, he said, "Stay with me. Just until you're stronger." Her eyes widened. "I can't. It's not a big place, but it's warm. And you won't be alone." She searched his face, looking for any hint of hesitation. Finding none, she finally nodded. That night, as she slept on his couch under a thick blanket, he sat by the window, staring at the city lights. He didn't know what came next. But for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The first few days were awkward. Lynn moved through his small apartment like a shadow, careful not to touch anything unnecessarily. She folded the blanket on the couch every morning as if trying to erase any sign she'd slept there. When he cooked, she hovered near the kitchen doorway, offering quiet suggestions but refusing to sit at the table until he insisted. "You don't have to act like a guest," he said one evening, pushing a bowl of soup toward her. "This is your home too, for now." She stirred the soup slowly, not meeting his eyes. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not." She gave him a look that said she didn't believe him. He was washing dishes when he heard a crash from the living room. Rushing in, he found Lynn kneeling beside a broken vase, her hands shaking as she gathered the pieces. "I'm sorry, it was an accident, I'll pay for." "Stop." He crouched beside her, gently taking the shards from her hands. "It was just a cheap thing from a flea market." "Are you cut?" She stared at him as if he'd spoken another language. No scolding. No anger. Just concern. Slowly, she uncurled her fingers, revealing a small red line across her palm. As he cleaned the cut with antiseptic, she finally spoke. "Where I come from, breaking something in another person's house, it's shameful." He taped a bandage over the cut. "Well, here, it's just something that happens." Something in her posture relaxed, just a little. The next morning, he woke to the smell of frying scallions. Lynn stood at the stove, her sleeves rolled up, flipping golden pancakes onto a plate. When she saw him, she stiffened. I thought I'd make breakfast." "To thank you." He took a bite. Crispy edges, soft center, perfectly seasoned. "This is amazing." A real smile, small but genuine, appeared for the first time since she'd moved in. "I've had practice." That became their new routine. She cooked, he washed up. Slowly, the apartment started feeling less like his space and more like theirs. Then, on the 5th day, the landlord knocked. Mr. Cattry was a squat man with a permanent frown who made a hobby of complaining about unauthorized guests. When he saw Lynn drying dishes in the kitchen, his eyebrows shot up. "Who's this?" Before he could answer, Lynn stepped forward, back straight. "I'm his aunt. Visiting from the countryside." Mr. Cattry's eyes narrowed. "No long-term visitors without notice." "She's only here a week," he lied smoothly. After the landlord left, Lynn let out a shaky breath. "I should go. I don't want trouble for you." He shook his head. "We'll figure it out." That night, he lay awake, listening to Lynn's quiet breathing from the couch. Mr. Cattry wasn't stupid, he'd be back. They needed a better plan. The next afternoon, he came home early from work to find Lynn sitting at the table, staring at a piece of paper. When he got closer, he saw it was a job listing for a cook at a nearby noodle shop. "You should apply," he said. She traced the edges of the paper. "What if they ask for papers I don't have?" He sat across from her. "Tell me the truth. How long have you been selling food on the street because you couldn't get a real job?" Her silence was answer enough. That's when the idea hit him. "What if we made your card official?" She blinked. "What?" "Get a permit, a license. You could have a real business." Her laugh was bitter. "With what money?" "I have some savings." Her face closed off immediately. "No. Absolutely not. It's not charity, it's an investment. You pay me back when you can." She stood abruptly, chair scraping. "You don't understand. I don't take debts. Never again." The raw pain in her voice stopped him. What happened? For a long moment, he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, in a voice so quiet he had to lean in, she said, "My husband." The words hung heavy between them. She didn't give details, but the way her fingers twisted in her sleeves told him enough. A man who'd used money as a chain. A life where every kindness came with strings attached. He chose his next words carefully. "This isn't like that. No conditions. No debt. Just, let me help you stand up. That's all." She studied his face, searching for the lie. When she didn't find it, some of the tension left her shoulders. The following week, they went to the city offices together. The bureaucracy was frustrating, forms in triplicate, endless lines, fees that seemed designed to discourage people like Lynn. But they persisted. When they finally held the small vendor permit in their hands, Lynn's fingers trembled. "This is real?" He grinned. "As real as it gets." They celebrated with tea from a street stall. Lynn sipped hers slowly, thoughtfully. "When I first came to the city, I thought people only helped if they wanted something." She met his eyes. "Thank you for proving me wrong." He didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. The next morning, they wheeled the refurbished cart back to her old spot near the bookstore. Regulars did double takes when they saw her. "You're back. We missed your buns. Where'd you go?" Lynn handled the attention with quiet grace, but he saw the way her eyes shone. This was more than a job, it was her place in the world. As he turned to leave for work, she caught his sleeve. "Wait." She wrapped 2 steaming buns in paper and pressed them into his hands. "For lunch." The familiar gesture, now weighted with something new, made his throat tight. He took a bite right there, even though they burned his tongue. "Best ones yet." Her smile could have lit up the whole street. Lynn's cart became more popular than ever. Word spread about her return, and soon there was a line every morning: office workers, shopkeepers, even students from the nearby school. Her hands moved quickly, wrapping, serving, making change, but she never rushed people. She remembered regulars' orders, asked after sick children, slipped extra dumplings to hungry-looking teenagers. He stopped by every afternoon, sometimes helping during the lunch rush. One day, as he handed a customer their change, he caught Lynn watching him with an odd expression. "What?" he asked when the crowd thinned. She wiped her hands on her apron. "You're good at this." "At what?" "Basic math." "At talking to people. Making them smile." She nodded toward a young mother walking away with her toddler. "That woman's been coming for weeks. Today was the first time I've seen her laugh." He shrugged. "Just being friendly." Lynn gave him one of her rare, full smiles. "Exactly." But not everyone was happy about her success. One evening, as they were closing up, 3 men approached. The leader, a thick-necked guy with a gold chain, kicked the cart's wheel. "Nice spot." Lynn's posture went rigid. She stepped slightly in front of the cart. "Can I help you?" Gold Chain smirked. "My uncle owns the noodle shop down the block. Says you're stealing his customers." The air turned sharp. He moved closer to Lynn. Her voice stayed calm. "People can choose where to eat. Not when some street vendor undercuts prices." Gold Chain leaned in. "Maybe you should move. For your health." He started to step forward, but Lynn's hand shot out, stopping him. She stared Gold Chain down without blinking. "I have a permit. I pay my fees. This is my spot." For a tense moment, no one moved. Then Gold Chain snorted. "We'll see." As they walked away, his hands were shaking. "We should report them." Lynn was already packing up, movements quick but controlled. "Won't do any good. His uncle probably pays off the local officers. That night, they sat in the apartment, strategizing. Lynn brewed strong tea, her face unreadable. We could move the cart, he suggested. Her grip tightened on her cup. No. Then what? She looked up, eyes blazing. We fight. He'd never heard that tone from her before. Not angry, determined. The next morning, they arrived extra early. Lynn had made twice the usual amount of food. When the first customers came, she announced, "Special today, half price for students and elderly." By noon, the line stretched around the corner. Gold Chain showed up again at closing time, face purple. "You stupid." A police officer happened to be walking by. "Problem here?" Lynn smiled sweetly. "No problem, officer. Just packing up." The officer, who'd been stopping by for free tea all week, nodded at Lynn, then gave Gold Chain a long look. The thug left, but the threat hung in the air. That weekend, he convinced Lynn to take a day off. They went to the Riverside Park, where she sat stiffly on the grass, unused to leisure. "You ever just do nothing?" he asked. She plucked a blade of grass. "When would I?" So he taught her the fine art of cloud watching. At first, she kept glancing at her watch, restless. Then she saw a cloud that looked exactly like a steamed bun, and her laugh startled a nearby pigeon. Later, as they shared ice cream, her first in years, she said quietly, "Back home, there was a river like this." He stayed silent, letting her continue at her own pace. "My husband, he wasn't always bad." She licked melted ice cream off her thumb. "When we married, he promised to take me to the city. Said we'd open a real restaurant." The ice cream turned to lead in his stomach. Took 5 years to save enough. Then his brother got sick. The money disappeared. She stared at the river. "After that, every bowl of rice I ate was a debt. Every piece of clothing was a chain." Her voice dropped. "One night, he came home drunk, said he'd sold our land to pay gamblers. That's when I left." The simplicity of the horror struck him speechless. She wiped her hands briskly, as if brushing off the past. "So you see why I can't owe anyone. Not ever again." He thought carefully before responding. "Lynn, eating ice cream with a friend isn't debt. Fixing someone's cart isn't a loan." He met her eyes. "Some things are just gifts." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly, like she was trying the idea on for size. Monday brought another challenge. His co-workers had noticed his hurried departures. "Who's the mystery woman?" teased Raj from accounting. "No woman," he said automatically. Raj raised an eyebrow. "You rush off every day at 5 sharp. That's woman behavior." The whole office was listening now. He sighed. "Just helping a friend with her food business." "Oh ho." Raj grinned. "She pretty?" He thought of Lynn's frown when concentrating, the way her nose scrunched when she laughed. "She's formidable." The office erupted in catcalls. His face burned, but oddly, he didn't correct them. That night, Lynn took one look at him and said, "What's wrong with your face?" "Nothing." He busied himself chopping vegetables. She poked his cheek. "You're red." "Allergies." She hummed skeptically but let it drop. The next month passed in a rhythm, early mornings at the cart, his day job, evenings helping Lynn prep for the next day. They fell into an easy partnership, communicating in shorthand and shared glances. Then, one rainy Thursday, everything changed. He was restocking napkins when Lynn suddenly swayed. Before he could react, she collapsed, sending a stack of plates crashing. "Lynn." He caught her just before she hit the ground. Her skin was clammy, her breathing shallow. The customers gasped. Someone shouted to call an ambulance. Lin's fingers weakly gripped his sleeve. No hospital, can't afford. He ignored her, already dialing 911. As the sirens approached, he cradled her head, whispering, "Don't you dare die on me, you stubborn woman." Her lips twitched. "Bossy, brat." Then her eyes rolled back, and the world narrowed to the wail of sirens and the terrifying stillness of her body in his arms. The ambulance ride felt like déjà vu, Lin pale on the stretcher, him gripping the railing, counting her shallow breaths. But this time, the fear was sharper, more urgent. "Possible stroke," the EMT said, attaching electrodes to Lin's chest. His stomach dropped. "She's too young for that." The EMT gave him a look. Malnutrition, chronic stress, untreated hypertension, age doesn't matter. The emergency room was a blur of fluorescent lights and shouted medical terms. When a doctor finally approached, her expression was unreadable. "Not a stroke," she said. "Severe anemia and exhaustion. Her hemoglobin levels are dangerously low." Relief washed over him, until the doctor continued, "But we found something else during imaging. A mass in her stomach." The world tilted. "Cancer?" "Too early to say. We need biopsies." They admitted her for tests. Sitting by her bed that night, watching the 4 drip nutrients into her veins, he noticed how small she looked without her usual stubborn energy. The heart monitor's steady beep became his anchor. Lin woke around midnight, blinking groggily. When she saw the tubes in her arm, panic flashed across her face. "Easy," he said, catching her hand before she could pull at the 4. "You passed out at the cart." Her throat worked as she swallowed. "How much?" "Don't." He squeezed her fingers. "Just focus on getting better." She turned her face away, but not before he saw the shame in her eyes. The next morning brought more tests. While Lin was taken for an endoscopy, his phone buzzed relentlessly, work wondering where he was. He sent a terse text about a family emergency. Raj called immediately. "You okay, brother?" The concern in his voice undid something in him. Words tumbled out, about Lin, the cart, the hospital. Silence. Then Raj said, "Give me 1 hour." Before he could ask what that meant, the call ended. Lin returned from procedures groggy and nauseous. When the nurse mentioned the biopsy results would take days, her jaw tightened. "I can't stay here that long." "You have to," he said. Her fingers pleated the thin hospital blanket. "The cart, the rent. I'll handle it." Her protest died when a commotion erupted in the hallway. Raj burst in, followed by 3 other co-workers, May from marketing carrying a fruit basket, Dave from IT with a stack of magazines, and old Mr. Chen from custodial holding a thermos. "We brought reinforcements," Raj announced. Lin shrank back against the pillows, eyes wide. May set the fruit on the bedside table. "We've all been buying breakfast from you for months. Time to return the favor." Mr. Chen poured steaming soup from the thermos. "Bone broth. My wife's recipe, good for blood." Lin looked at him, bewildered. He shrugged, just as surprised. Then Raj dropped the bombshell. Office took up a collection. He handed Lin an envelope. "For medical bills." Her hands shook too badly to take it. He did instead, peeking inside, a thick stack of bills. His throat closed up. "Can't accept this," Lin whispered. Dave rolled his eyes. "Too late. Already spent." When she frowned, he added, "Kidding. But seriously, take it. You've been feeding us forever." Lin's eyes shone suspiciously bright. She turned her face toward the window, but not before he saw the tear escape. His co-workers stayed an hour, filling the sterile room with laughter and office gossip. By the time they left, some color had returned to Lin's cheeks. Alone again, she finally spoke. "Your friends, they're annoying?" She huffed a laugh. "Good. Too good." He opened the envelope, counting. "Over $2,000. Looks like the cart's covered for a while." She closed her eyes. "Why are people so kind to me?" The raw wonder in her voice broke his heart a little. The answer came 3 days later, when the biopsy results cleared her of cancer but revealed severe ulcers from years of irregular meals and stress. As the doctor explained the treatment plan, Lynn kept interrupting with the same question, "How much?" Finally, the doctor sighed. "Ma'am, your health isn't negotiable." Later, while Lynn slept, he met with the hospital's social worker, a no-nonsense woman who helped him apply for emergency Medicaid and food assistance. "Not many people would do this for a friend," she remarked as they filled out forms. He thought of Lynn's hands shaping dumplings at 4 a.m., the way she always gave extra to hungry kids. She'd do the same. When Lynn was discharged a week later, she moved like a fragile bird, clutching the railing on the apartment stairs. The doctor's orders were clear: rest, medication, no work for at least a month. As soon as she was settled on the couch, she started planning. "If we pre-make buns and freeze them, maybe." "No." He crossed his arms. "Doctor's orders." She scowled. "We'll starve." "Actually." He pulled out his phone, showing her the crowdfunding page Raj had set up. The total made her gasp. "Your customers donated. They miss you." She covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking. He pretended not to notice the quiet sobs. That night, he woke to find Lynn standing on the tiny balcony, staring at the city lights. "Can't sleep?" he asked. She didn't turn. "All my life, I've been alone. Even married, I was alone." Her voice was raw. Now suddenly, this. She gestured vaguely at the apartment, the city, him. "It frightens me." He understood. Kindness could be terrifying when you'd only known its opposite. "You'll get used to it," he said lightly. She turned then, studying him in the dim light. "Why did you help me?" "Really?" The truth spilled out before he could censor it. "Because when I saw you on that bench every morning, you were the only thing in my life that felt real." Something unspoken passed between them. Then Lynn nodded, as if filing this answer away with other precious things she couldn't afford to lose. "Come inside," she said finally. "You'll catch cold." The weeks of Lynn's recovery transformed their small apartment in unexpected ways. What had once been a temporary arrangement now felt unsettlingly permanent, her herbal medicines lined up beside his coffee mugs, her hand-knitted blanket draped over his sofa, the lingering scent of ginger and garlic clinging to the curtains. One rainy afternoon, he came home to find Lynn sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by account books. "You're supposed to be resting," he said, shaking water from his jacket. She didn't look up. "Resting makes me nervous." He peered over her shoulder. She'd organized all their expenses into neat columns: medical bills, cart repairs, even his rent payments. At the bottom, circled heavily, 4,820 renminbi. "What's this?" "My debt." He groaned. "Lynn. I've calculated." She tapped the paper. "If I work double shifts after reopening, I can repay everything in 5 months." The stubborn set of her jaw warned him arguing was pointless. Instead, he grabbed a pencil and added a new column titled "Unrepayable Things," listing. "Saved my life, twice. Taught me how to make proper dumplings. Stopped me from becoming a boring office zombie." Lynn stared at the page, then abruptly swatted his arm. "Foolish boy." But the corner of her mouth twitched. The tension broke when a letter slipped from her pile, postmarked from a rural village he didn't recognize. Lynn snatched it up, but not before he saw the shaky handwriting. "Family?" he asked carefully. Her fingers tightened around the envelope. Younger sister. I haven't, not since I left. That night, he pretended to sleep as Lynn sat by the window, rereading the letter by moonlight. When soft sniffles broke the silence, he kept his eyes closed, giving her the privacy she needed. The next morning, her eyes were red-rimmed but calm. Over congee, she said quietly, my niece is getting married. They invited me. The spoon froze halfway to his mouth. Are you going? She stirred her congee absently. 12 years is a long time. He waited. My sister says, he's gone. Drank himself to death 3 winters back. There was no triumph in her voice, just a quiet exhaustion. He reached across the table, covering her hand with his. You could visit. Just for a day. Her fingers trembled beneath his. What if they blame me for leaving? What if they've missed you? The thought seemed to terrify her more than any street thug ever had. By unspoken agreement, they didn't mention the letter again. But he noticed it tucked carefully into her recipe book, the edges worn from handling. As Lynn regained strength, they began testing recipes for the cart's reopening. The tiny kitchen became a laboratory, steamed buns with new fillings, spicy sesame noodles, even delicate custard tarts Lynn had learned from a Hong Kong chef decades ago. These could be our premium items, he said through a mouthful of experimental pork bun. Lynn frowned. Too fancy for street food. People will pay for quality. He wiped sauce from his chin. We could even get a second cart eventually. The moment the words left his mouth, he realized his mistake. We. Eventually. As if this arrangement wasn't temporary. Lynn's chopping slowed. Neither acknowledged the slip. The cart's grand reopening became an unofficial neighborhood holiday. Regulars arrived with flowers and red envelopes for good luck. Even the grumpy bookstore owner hung a "Welcome Back" banner. When Lynn lifted the cart's shutter for the first time in 6 weeks, applause broke out. Her ears turned pink, but she conducted business with renewed vigor, hands steadier, smile easier. He watched from across the street, leaning against Raj's car as his co-workers formed their own cheer squad. Damn, Raj whistled. She's like a general commanding troops. Indeed, Lynn's cart now had military precision, a new menu board, streamlined workflow, even loyalty cards he'd designed on his work computer. May elbowed him. So when are you quitting to be her full-time dumpling lackey? He laughed, but the idea didn't sound terrible. That evening, as they counted the day's earnings, nearly triple their usual take, Lynn suddenly said, I'm going. To the wedding. He looked up. She continued counting coins, voice deliberately casual. It's on the 15th. I'll take the overnight bus. Something warm blossomed in his chest. Want company? The coins clinked as her hands stilled. You'd. Someone's got to carry all the gifts your niece will demand. Her exhale was shaky. The bus leaves at 8. Got it. They returned to counting in comfortable silence. The next fortnight passed in a flurry of preparations, extra shifts to build savings, selecting gifts for Lynn's family, teaching Raj how to mind the cart during their 2-day absence. The night before their trip, Lynn was unusually quiet. As they packed steamed buns for the journey, she asked abruptly, What will you tell people? About what? About us. She focused intently on folding a dumpling. At the wedding. What should we say we are? The question hovered between them, weighted with possibilities. Landlord and tenant? Friends? Business partners? Something else he hadn't dared name? He pretended to consider. How about 2 idiots who found each other at the right time? Lynn threw a flour-dusted cloth at him, but her eyes crinkled with suppressed laughter. The bus station was chaotic at 8 p.m., migrant workers hauling sacks of goods, families herding children, the sharp scent of diesel and sweat. Lynn clutched her bag like a shield, shoulders tense as they boarded. As the engine rumbled to life, she stared out the window at the receding city lights. He pretended not to notice her white-knuckled grip on the seat. 3 hours into the journey, as countryside darkness swallowed the highway, Lin's head drooped onto his shoulder. He held perfectly still, savoring the weight and warmth of her, the faint floral scent of her shampoo cutting through the bus's stale air. Somewhere near midnight, the bus hit a pothole, jolting them awake. Lin blinked groggily, realizing their position, but didn't pull away. In the dim glow of emergency lights, her face was softer, younger. "You're comfortable," she murmured. His heart hammered. "Good to know." A beat. Then Lin's fingers tentatively intertwined with his, her calluses familiar against his palm. No explanation, no grand declaration, just this simple connection in the dark. He squeezed gently, answering without words. Outside, the night rushed by, carrying them toward a village, a reunion, and a future neither had planned for but both were starting to believe they deserved. The village emerged at dawn, clusters of brick houses nestled between emerald rice paddies, smoke curling from morning cook fires. As the bus wheezed to a stop, Lin's grip on his hand turned vice-tight. "Last time I saw this place," she whispered, "I was running away in the rain." Before he could respond, a shriek cut through the morning air. "Jia Jia!" A round-faced woman in a floral apron came barreling toward them, nearly tripping over her rubber boots. Lin made a choked sound as her sister crashed into her, both women trembling violently. "You came," the sister sobbed into Lin's shoulder. "After all my letters, you finally." Lin's reply was too muffled to hear, but the way her hands clutched at her sister's back spoke volumes. The sister, introduced as Xia, pulled back to study Lin's face, then turned curious eyes toward him. "And this is?" Lin rolled her eyes. "Don't be ridiculous." She grabbed an extra blanket and folded it down the mattress center. Border. Lying back to back in the dark, their breathing gradually synchronized. Just as sleep crept in, Lin spoke softly, "Thank you for coming with me." He turned onto his back, staring at the ceiling. "Where else would I be?" The wedding day dawned bright and chaotic. Lin was swept into cooking duties, her skilled hands instantly remembering old rhythms. By noon, the courtyard overflowed with laughter, music, and the smell of roasting pork. During the ceremony, he caught Lin watching not the bride, but the groom's tender expression as he lifted his wife's veil. Something wistful crossed her face before she schooled her features. The feast that followed was legendary, dishes Lin had helped prepare served alongside her sister's famous stews. When the bride shyly asked Lin to share city stories, the entire family leaned in, hanging on her every word. "You're famous there too," he interjected. "Best street food in the district." Lin shot him a look, but the pleased flush on her cheeks gave her away. As fireworks lit the night sky, Xia pulled them aside. "Stay longer," she urged. "The harvest festival is next week." Lin shook her head. "The cart can wait 2 more days," he finished. When Lin glared, he shrugged. "Raj won't burn down the market in 48 hours. Xia clasped their hands. "Please. The children want to hear about the city." And she hesitated. "There's something of Baba's for you." The next morning, Xia led them to a weathered shed. Inside, beneath a tarp, sat a 3-wheeled motorcycle with a modified cargo bed, the village version of a food truck. "Baba built it after you left," Xia said softly. "Said when you came home, you'd need it for your restaurant." Lin's hands trembled as she touched the rusted handlebars. That night, as they repacked their bags, Lin was unusually quiet. "Thinking about the bike?" he asked. She folded a sweater with excessive care. "Xia says I could run a good business here. The new highway brings tourists now." The words landed like a physical blow. He forced a neutral tone. "You considering it?" Lin paused. Would you? Would I what? She shook her head abruptly. Never mind. The return bus ride was quieter than the trip out. Lynn stared at the passing scenery, her thoughts clearly churning. Only when the city's skyline appeared did she speak. I'm not staying in the village. His heart leapt, then immediately chastised himself for the reaction. If you wanted to, it's okay. I could. I know what I want, Lynn interrupted. Then, with uncharacteristic hesitation, but I need to know if you. The bus chose that moment to hit a pothole, jolting them apart. By the time they recovered, the moment had passed, the spell broken by the driver's colorful cursing. Back at the apartment, exhaustion hit them like a tidal wave. They fell into their usual routines, Lynn brewing tea, him checking the mail, both pretending nothing had almost been said. Then he opened an official-looking envelope. What's this? Lynn asked as his jaw dropped. He handed her the letter. Market renovation notice. They're rebuilding the whole square, and offering permanent stalls to existing vendors. Lynn scanned the document, brow furrowing. First come, first served. And the deadline is tomorrow. They stared at each other. Permanent stall meant stability, weather protection, real plumbing. It also meant a hefty deposit. Lynn chewed her lip. We'd have to decide now. No time to. I'm in if you are. The words tumbled out. Her eyes searched his face. You'd really tie yourself to a cranky old woman and her dumpling dreams? He stepped closer. I'd really tie myself to the bravest, most stubborn person I know. The air between them crackled. Lynn's gaze dropped to his mouth, then back up. For one breathless moment, he thought. Then she abruptly turned away, grabbing the teapot. We'll need more capital. Maybe Raj can. Lynn. She kept her back to him, shoulders rigid. The stall would change everything. We should think carefully. He wanted to shake her. To pull her close. To demand they finally talk about whatever this was between them. Instead, he took a deep breath. Okay. We'll sleep on it. That night, the line of folded blankets between them in bed felt like the Great Wall. The apartment was too quiet. Lynn sat at the kitchen table, staring at the stall application forms. The business name line glared up at her, blank and accusing. Across from her, he pretended to focus on his tea, but she saw the way his fingers tapped restlessly against the cup. Outside, the city hummed, honking cars, distant laughter, life moving forward. She took a deep breath. We should call it morning dumplings. His head snapped up. You decided? It's simple. People remember it. She avoided his eyes, filling in the name with careful strokes. He reached across the table, stopping her hand. Lynn. Look at me. When she finally met his gaze, the intensity there made her breath catch. This isn't just about a food stall anymore, he said softly. The truth hung between them, heavy and undeniable. All those almost moments, her head on his shoulder on the bus, their linked hands in the dark, the way they moved around each other's spaces like two halves of a whole. Lynn's throat tightened. I know. Then why won't you? I'm scared. The admission burst out louder than she intended. She pressed a hand to her mouth, shocked at her own outburst. To his credit, he didn't laugh or dismiss her. He simply waited, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her wrist. Lynn exhaled shakily. Every time I've trusted someone, it's ended in pain. My husband. My father. Even this city tried to break me. Her voice dropped to a whisper. But you keep standing there, refusing to leave. It terrifies me. His smile was tender. Good. Good. Because I'm terrified too. He laced their fingers together. But not enough to walk away. The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silence. Somewhere downstairs, a neighbor's television played a laugh track. Lynn studied their joined hands, her work-roughened fingers entwined with his. How natural it felt. How right. "You'll regret it," she said weakly. I snore. "I'm stubborn." He kissed her. Not some dramatic movie moment, but a simple press of lips, warm, firm, and over too soon. When he pulled back, his eyes searched hers. "Still scared?" Her heart hammered. "Yes. Me too." He kissed her again. This time, she kissed him back. The application forms lay forgotten as they stumbled toward the bedroom, years of unspoken words finally giving way to touch. Later, as dawn painted the room in pale gold, Lynn traced the curve of his shoulder and marveled at how fear could coexist with such overwhelming joy. They submitted the forms that afternoon, hand in hand. Under business partners, they'd checked the married box, a small rebellion against bureaucracy, and a promise to themselves. The market manager raised an eyebrow but said nothing. 3 months later, morning dumplings opened to lines around the block. Lynn's sister sent a red banner that hung proudly behind the counter. Raj and the office crew became regulars, claiming VIP status. Even Gold Chain from the noodle shop stopped by, with an apology and a business proposal. On their 1-year anniversary, as they closed up the stall, he produced 2 bus tickets. Village visit? Lynn wiped flour from his cheek. "Only if you promise not to cry when Popo pinches your cheeks again." He laughed, pulling her close. "Deal." As they walked home through the bustling streets, Lynn realized something remarkable: she wasn't looking for empty benches anymore. The home she'd spent a lifetime searching for had been there all along, in the steady presence of the man beside her, in the warmth of their shared kitchen, in the simple joy of building something together. The city sparkled around them, endless in its possibilities, but her gaze stayed fixed ahead, on their apartment window, on the future waiting just up the stairs, on the extraordinary ordinary life they'd created from scraps of kindness and courage. And when his fingers found hers in the dark, she held on tight, finally ready to believe this love was hers to keep.